Okay. We're going to talk about Safek Arlah. Okay. I'm going to say some things at the beginning just to get us started, and then we'll actually get to the Safek Arlah. Some of the things I'm going to say at the beginning you probably know, but just to be clear and cover all the bases, I'm just going to mention it. If a fruit grows for the first 2 years, it's Asr, it's Arlah. And there's a very big difference whether that fruit grew in Eretz Yisrael or in Chutz La'aretz. If it grew in Eretz Yisrael, the din is, both of them are Asr Midaraisa, but Safek Arlah is Asr, Safek Arlah is Asr, and in Eretz Yisrael, and Safek Arlah in Chutz La'aretz is Mutter. Okay, that's a Gemara, that even though they're both Asr Midaraisa, in Chutz La'aretz is Mutter, Safek Arlah is Mutter, which is why most people in Chutz La'aretz never think about Safek Arlah. To us, Arlah is kamat, not negata. So if you have a fruit tree in your backyard, you think about it. But anybody else, when you go to the fruit store, you don't think about Arlah, because Safek Arlah is mutter. That means that there's a chance that this thing is not Arlah, then I'm allowed to eat it, which is basically everything. So I don't have to think about when I pick up an apple, whether it's Arlah or not, because who cares? Because it's a Safek. Safek is mutter. It's of course, very negated to people in Eretz Yisrael, because Safek Arlah in Eretz Yisrael is Hasar. And what's negated to us, and we're going to try to focus on that point for us, is we living in here, when we get a fruit that comes from Eretz Yisrael, then we have to think about that. Okay, in Eretz Yisrael, they actually have a different way of dealing with it. If you go to Eretz Yisrael, the fruit stores have hashgacha for the trumas or maisus. Anyhow, they have to have a hashgacha for the trumas or maisus, and the hashgacha covers that it's not Arlo either.
So that's not hashgacha.
What
so the master could on the spot.
Right. You're talking about how do you carry out the hashgacha. So for your curiosity, it's actually going to get to later, but for your curiosity, the way they carry it out is that the farmers who want to sell to stores that are going to be certified for Arla, those farmers spray their trees with something to keep them from producing fruit. When they plant new trees, they spray them. I guess mashkichim come there for the first couple of years and spray the trees that they shouldn't produce fruit for those years. That way they know that this farm all his fruit is not Arla. Because the new trees, they watch the new trees and they spray them and they don't produce fruit. So there's hashgacha. So for the people in Eretz Yisrael, they're buying fruits from a store that they're surely encouraged to buy fruits from a store that has hashgacha on it anyhow. But when we go into the store, and actually what inspired this is that they're selling a fruit called a sweetie fruit. Okay, it's a blend between a pomelo and a grapefruit. They're selling it here from Eretz Yisrael, and so the question is, are those fruits Arla or are they not Arla? Okay, so we don't have hashgacha on Costco. There's no hashgacha there. So the question is, are we allowed to buy those fruits or not allowed? What do you think about the fact that it might possibly be Arla, those fruits?
Is that a climb issue? Is there a climb issue?
It is climb. I mean, it was climb to make it, but it's issue for the person to create it. Once it's created, then it's mutter. So he okay, go for it. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the shaila. The shaila is most talked about by Israeli poskim. All of the major Israeli poskim over the years have spoken about it, because for them it's a real day-to-day shaila. In America, it's come out not a shaila, but we're going to take what they said and see how it applies to us. For we have the shaila a little bit different than they do. Excuse me. Okay, so before we start, I need to just mention, you're probably familiar with this, but I'm going to mention a couple of basic ways of approaching a suffix that are going to be negated to us. And those are, one of the main rules that we use for deciding the suffix is called the parish and parish. We have a whole group of something. We don't know if what left the group, what was parish from the group, is it from the heter or from the isser. So we say if the roiv of the group is mutter or the roiv is asr, whichever one it is, we assume that it came from there. Okay, so for example, I don't know if this is a perfect example, but just to bring out, I don't know if this is a perfect example, but to bring out the point, you milk a cow. Okay, most cows, the cows out there in the world, some of them are treifas and some of them are not. Most cows are not treifas. So you say, this milk that came from a cow, did it come from a treif cow, from a kosher cow? We say, called the parish, muru parish. We say that, and therefore we assume that this milk is from a kosher cow. Okay. What happens if you shech that cow? So we've been talking about this the past few times. If you shech the cow, and now you want to know if the cow is a treif or it's not a treif. So now, even though min ha-Torah, you would say, called the parish, muru parish, midrabanan, you have since it's a miut hamatzui that would be a treif in its lungs, therefore you have to check the lungs. So therefore you have to, before you eat the meat, even though midraisa you could eat it. But midrabanan, since it's a miut hamatzui, which we say is 10%, the miut hamatzui of animals have treifas in the lungs, you have to check the lungs to see if it's a treif. So even though midraisa called the parish midrabanan, we say you have to check it since it's miut hamatzui. Yeah, that rule of called the parish only applies when it was parish, when it left the group. It's not in the group, it left the group. What happens if the suffix came up while before it left the group, the Safek came up when the Isser is in its original location. Then there's a different rule, which is kol kavuah k'mechza mechza, okay, which is Gzeres HaKasuv, that we say kol kavuah k'mechza mechza, that if the Shaila came up when it was kavuah, when it was in its original place, then we say it's always considered 50-50. Usually that's a chumrah. Usually saying kol kavuah is a chumrah, instead of kol the parish, it's a chumrah. It could be a kula also. Instead of saying roi var heter, you could say roi var, it's mechza mechza. But usually it's a chumrah. Instead of, you can say kol the parish and be meko, we say kol kavuah, and you have to be machmir and assume that it's a 50-50 Safek. Hagam that it's really 80-20, but you have to assume it's a 50, you have to treat it as if it's 50-50. Okay? And then last is that even though the general rule is that we follow parish or we follow kavuah, and with the miut and hamatzui sort of mixed into there are some times that even when it's parish, even if it's not kavuah, you still have to be machmir even more than even if it's less than 50% isser, or even less than 10% isser. And that is, the most famous example, which is very near to us, is the b'shishim. Sometimes, if isser falls into eter, if isser meat falls into milk, or tray food falls into kosher food, we don't say it's mutter because it's called the parish. We say it's nice and tam, and it's not mutter until it's shishin. Right, by nice and... No, I'm talking about things, I'm giving an example, something that needs, the fact that it's less than 10% or less than 50% is not enough to be matter. You have to, it's only mutter, it's only... Right, that's a different type of example.
That's not the case we're taking out, even though you do not like all the parish. By the time you ask them because of the
okay, that's fine. Okay, it's not a perfect example. Okay, but what's again to us, now we're finally going to hear something about Arlah. What's again to us is that Arlah has a din that we don't say it's not bottle in Roiv, it's bottle in Messiah. It means if I have a farm, and I know that there's I planted one tree in there that was a new tree, and I can't figure out which one is the new tree, which one is the old tree. So the din is, if there's less than 200 trees in the farm, then all the fruit is also, because we say the Arla tree is the new tree needs to be buttered in Messiah. If there be 200 trees, the fruit would be mutter. But if there's less than 200 trees, then the fruit is also, because it has to be buttered in Messiah in order to be mutter. Okay, so the
case by trees, it's a case.
The Mishnah is by trees. The Mishnah is talking about trees. I'm not going to talk about the details of why it's not kavuah. We're going to go right past it in a minute. But the Mishnah's case is talking about a tree. But the point is, it'll make it easier for you if we had a fruit that we knew was Arla and got mixed into 100 other fruits that were not Arla, we would say it has to be bottom on Messiah. It's not.
A tree that are bottom on Messiah, trees like a kavuah. Wouldn't be bottom on Messiah either.
Right. But the Mishnah's case, that's what he asked. But the Mishnah's case of a needing bit of Messiah is a case of a tree. Why it's not kavuah is really not our issue.
The Mishnah means it's talking about the fruits of such a field got mixed up.
Yeah, okay, that's correct. So something like that. Okay, but I'm just for the example.
Second. The tree in the top is bottom. No, top is not that. That's bit on the right.
Okay.
You know which is which. So the hook is sewer that.
Okay. Okay. So now that we've got these we can call it the background. Okay. So now we'll go to the actual the way the poskim talk about it. As I mentioned to you, the poskim in Eretz Yisrael, the one we talked about it, all the major poskim that you've heard of from Eretz Yisrael have all written about it or spoken about it. They talk about a lot of different situations. We're talking about one particular situation, which is the most common, which is you walk into the store and you don't know the fruit in front of you. Is it Arla or is it not Arla? That's the question that most people face. Most people are not going to a farm or buying it off a stand. They have all kinds of situations where what I'm saying is not true, but the standard case of a person walking in, I have not yet, okay, I have one exception, but I have not found anybody who has said that should be treated as kavuah. Okay, and we're not going to talk about the details, but there's lots of details as to why it's not kavuah. But they treat They treat the fruit that I see in the fruit store as considered parish. That fruit that I see in the store is and they say if most of the fruit that's out there is not Arla, most of this type of pears are not Arla, then I'm allowed to walk into the fruit store and say I'm allowed to buy that kind of pears because we say called the parish, move parish. Okay, I'll give you an example. I'm using old information. But the idea is just to bring out the point. Okay, this is from a 10-year-old chart, just because I didn't have the other one in front of me. Okay, they make charts of these things. Star fruit, okay, was 12% Arla in the year that I was looking at that chart. That means if you walk into the store and you see a star fruit and you have no idea what it is, come on, everybody says that is considered called the Parish from Ruva Parish, and since Roiv star fruits were not Arla, you're allowed to buy the fruit. It's also, for similar reasons that we're not going to talk about, we don't have to be Choishish that should be bought to be Messiah. Okay? But it's not an example. Again, there are situations when it has to be bought to be Messiah, but the standard fruit, the star fruit that I pick up in the store, the other fruits, I don't know, peaches, according to this chart, was 5.9% of them were Arla. I pick it up. I don't say it has to be bought to be Messiah. There are fruits like that that attack a bought to be Messiah. It doesn't have to be like that. As long as it's called the Parashat Mutter. Now, we're going to talk now for a minute about this Shita, but I'm just putting in your head that we're going to come back in a minute to Rabbi Yashiv says a little bit differently, and others, even the ones who I mentioned, are going to have their own twist on it. So we're going to come back to that at the end. Okay, so if the simple thing, if you read this you'd say is, okay, so if I want to walk into the store, and I want to buy a fruit, I want to buy the star fruit, 12% of it is Arla, so I say, good, 12% is Arla, so I'm allowed to buy it. If I want to buy, I'm going to mention two fruits that may not have Arla. If I want to buy blackberries and papayas, okay, both of which have more than 50% Arla according to this chart, okay, if I want to buy those, and if you hold that those things are considered fruits and have the din of Arla, which is not at all pashut, but if you hold that those things have a din of Arla, then they would not be allowed to buy, because there's no call to parish, because they have 60 or 70% Arla, so they're not allowed to buy it. Okay? We're not talking about whether the din of Arla apply. I'm just using it as an example. Okay. However, comes along Chaim Kanevsky. He brings the Chazon Ish, who's one of the people who says that you say called the parish. He brings the Chazon Ish and he says, but there's a din of miut hamatzui. There's a din that food that's not that if there's a miut hamatzui of fruits and the miut hamatzui is 10%, he brings the Mishnah Yaakov, it's 10%. So Mamela, if it's more than 10%, you're not allowed to buy it. Okay, he just says it just like as a statement. Okay, now. See, makes a lot of sense to us.
You have to buy it, you have to check it.
See, I'm getting to that in a second. Very good. Good point. We're talking about that. But he says, he says you shouldn't get it. You can't buy it. He says, why can't you? Because the miut hamatzui. In other words, what's his point? With the Raisa, we say called the parish. That's true. We say called the parish. But at the same time, with the Rabbanan, we say if it's a miut hamatzui, you're not allowed to use it. So he says, no. So called the parish. The Chazon Ish is right that you say called the parish, but it's a miut hamatzui, and he just leaves it like that. Okay. So his point seems well taken, that it should be a miut hamatzui, but it sort of begs the question, how come Chazon Ish,
and 104, please?
He's quoting a Chazon Ish. How come Chazon Ish didn't say that? How come Rav Yosef didn't say that? How come the Mechasis didn't say that? Shevet HaLevi and Shlomo Zalman, all these people who say that you can say called the parish, in different variations you can say called the parish, nobody says you need miut hamatzui. Rav Yosef talks about that.
Who did say it?
Rav Chaim Kanevsky says it. He brings the Chazon Ish, says it, you say called the parish, and he says, but L'maisa midrabanan you have to say miut hamatzui. So the question just is, well, what's going on? How come everybody's saying called the parish, and Rav Chaim Kanevsky seems to have a good point that you should say miut hamatzui? Okay, we have another question. The same question, just in a different form. What's the classic case of called the parish and Ruba parish? What's the classic case? Tesha chanuyos that are selling basar shchuta, and one is selling basar nevela, and the din is, if you find the meat and it's the right situation, then it qualifies to call the parish. What's the din? You're allowed to eat the meat. You're allowed to eat the meat. 10% of the meat is traded. Okay, so that's what I'm getting to that. I'm headed in that direction. So Tesha chanuyos.
Oh, it's not asking questions.
Okay, so the answer. So let me just ask my question. I'm getting to you, both of you, very smart. Okay, so so why don't we say in that case? Why don't you say Choshesh miut hamatzui? It's the classic case, and it's 10%, right? It's Tesha chanuyos, it's selling shchuta, and one is selling the veil, so it can be 10%. So the answer is like the two of you are saying, which is I think it's correct, and this is the part that's going to be negated to the coming times when we talk about raspberries, which is like this. When the Chum said that you have to be Choshesh miut hamatzui, they didn't say that if there's a miut hamatzui of Isser, you're not allowed to eat the food. That's not what they said. They said if there's a miut hamatzui of food, of Isser, you have to go check for it. How do we see that? We saw it in the din we just learned. If you have a miut hamatzui of bugs, you have to check it. Avaru bishla, if you already cooked it already, then...
Dan, call me again, you're on Do Not Disturb.
If you... Good idea. If you're over bishlei, in the right cases, then what's the din? The din is, in over bishlei, the din is, you, what's it called? You let it eat it. Why? Because it's only a chiyuv that you should have checked it if you weren't able to. Again, not in cases where you maliciously didn't do it, but you weren't able to check it, you're not mechuyev to. But the same din is by trefus. What's the din if you don't have a way to check it? Okay? Again, not in every situation, but there are situations where you're not able to check it, and the din is, so you can eat it. Okay? You can eat it. Why? Because it's only a chiyuv that you should go check it. So Mamela, like Yossi just said a second ago, in the guy found a piece of meat in town, the point is he has no clue where that piece of meat came from. He doesn't know where the piece of meat came from. What is he supposed to do? Well, what Chazal want him to do, go check where it came from? That's the whole problem. Is I don't know where it came from. So theoretically, in miut hamatzui we say not to eat it. But Lamaisa, miut hamatzui only means that I have to go check. There's no way to check. That's the whole problem. Is I don't know where the piece of meat came from. And miut hamatzui doesn't answer it. And the same is going to be, I think, should be by Safek Arlah in a fruit store. Okay, I walk into the fruit store. I pick up this star fruit that has 12% Arlah. So you say there's 12% of the star fruit of Arlah. Is there any way to figure out whether this star fruit is Arlah? Of course there's no way. I for sure can't find that out. Even the store owner can't figure it out. Maybe if you really did deep drishas chakiris, he could figure it out, but I can't figure it out for sure. And it's very questionable if he could. So, everyone who said that you should say, called the parish, all the people who said that you should say called the parish, now we hear what they're saying. Because miut hamatzui doesn't make sense over here. Miut hamatzui means you should go investigate it. If I walk into Costco, what am I going to do? I'm going to go start investigating where the food came from, and I'm going to figure out which farm I'm going to figure out. Of course I can't figure that out. So that's not possible to figure it out. So we well understand why everybody said called the parish and did not say miut hamatzui. Okay? So now we're stuck with Chaim Kanievsky. So what did he say? Why did he say you should follow miut hamatzui? So the answer to this, some people here will like it and some people won't. Okay, this is a Baal Batish answer. And the answer is as follows. I went to... What?
No, that's the one on the side. When you want to be in.
Okay, I had a hunch on a certain thing, and I was directed to speak to Rabbi Friedman not our Rabbi Friedman from Skokie Yeshiva. And I asked him the following, and he confirmed the following. He said he lived in Eretz Yisrael from 1969 till 1982. Okay, with a couple of years break in the middle, he was in America. And he said, when he first lived there was no hashgacha on stores for Trumas Amaisis or anything. As he lived there, over the years that he was there, that concept of having hashgacha on a store started developing. First for Trumas Amaisis, and later Shvius, and last was Arlah. Because of these shilas that Safek Arlah might be mutter anyhow, and that developed last. By the time he was leaving, that was already like in full swing that there was such a thing as hashgacha, that a food doesn't have Arlah. So all the people I told you who said that it's mutter are all talking about it in the theoretical din, in the din the way it applied to them, which was they walk into a store, not a clue what things are Arlah, which are not Arlah. So the din is call the parish and rule the parish because I can't check for a miut hamatzui. By the time Chaim Kanievsky wrote his sefer, when he had a very simple option. If he wants to buy star fruit that are not Arlah, he just goes to his fruit store that has hashgacha on it. His fruit store is able to tell him that these star fruit have no Arlah to them. So he's saying, again, you can argue on this point, but he's saying is the miut hamatzui says to me I should check if my fruit is Arlah or not. So I can't actually check if the fruit store in the non-certified fruit store if that star fruit has hashgacha is Arlah or not. But I have a way to make sure that I get no Arlah. I could go into the store with the Sheirus Hechsher. If you live in Bnei Brak, I walk into the store with the Sheirus Hechsher, and it tells me that this one has no Arlah on it. So when we say that Midrabanan Yemuchoyev to be Mevarer, he's understanding that being Mechuyev to Mevarer means go to the store that has the stuff without that has the stuff that's not Arlah, rather than the store that has the Safek Arlah.
No, but you're telling me a miut hamatzui, you're going to have a choice of two separate ones, right? And I could get this one just as good as the other one. Miut hamatzui hire me to get the kosher one. I forgot about the Badish. Nobody told me that's trying to miut hamatzui.
I'm not convinced that it's right. I'm not convinced it's right. You could argue and say, come on, the fruit in front of me, I have nowhere to be environmental, I'll eat it. You could argue. I'm not saying that it's clear that that's correct. I'm saying, but at least I can understand it. That he would be saying is that since I have a choice of buying an orange that's no Arlah and an orange that's Safek Arlah, Ken Zayin that miut hamatzui is machayim me buy this one instead of buying that one. Let's think of it like this. The Rashba said one of his explanations for why you have to check lungs is, he says, it's near kabal ayim in isser. How could you open the animal up anyhow and not even bother looking to see if the lungs are okay? That's what the Rashi was saying. So that is to say, it's like you don't care about the isser. So that feeling is, if you could go to this fruit store, to that fruit store, you don't care about Arlah. If you go to that fruit store, there's going to be no Arlah. And you go to this fruit store, it's a Safek Arlah. So you don't care about the Isser. So that svara comes across as being machayim you to go to that, to this place. So again, you could argue on that. I'm not saying you couldn't argue. You could argue and say, miut hamatzui, I have an orange in my hand. Can I be mavar? No, so I can eat it. Okay, you could argue, but at least I can understand why he says like this. It's to me, it's strange, because usually in Chaim Kanievsky, whatever the Chazon Ish says is, that's it. That's the end of the decision. Whatever he said, that's law. Here brings Chazon Ish saying that you called the parsha. He says, by the way, but there's miut hamatzui. I said, well, what happened to Chazon Ish? What happened? My goodness, it's like begging the question. He doesn't give this answer. Someone told me I should write it down.
Chazon Ish is talking about that's the miut hamatzui. He said the Chazon Ish is talking without the miut hamatzui, when it's 4-5%.
That's not what the Chazon Ish is called. The parish, you call the parish. The Chazon Ish says,
it will be kavuah. He said, don't tell me kavuah. If it will be kavuah, it will be one. Whatever, there's 1,000 deals.
No.
The Chazon Ish, no, that's in the point. I'm the Chazon Ish, the miut hamatzui. That's right.
He's saying they're buying stores.
If the Chazon Ish was one line, you could tell me that. It's lines and lines and lines of Chazon Ish in more than one place. No, he's talking about for real. He's talking about people. It's the second time the Chazon Ish talks about it is in hadracha lehilchos arlah. Like this is like the ladies' guide to going shopping. It's like that's what it is. Like So I don't know, not exactly, but it's like directions.
What's wrong with?
So okay, so
when you start, 15 minutes ago, you were talking kavuah and miut hamatzui, I was thinking in my mind, wow, this is very different from the rest of Kashrus. In all of Kashrus, you can start going through and saying, oh, all flavors are okay. I give you make a whole list of cases, and you get half of our work here is that we answer the call, there's a scar. So I'm wondering, why is this in a whole different category? Polish. You can be mouth around things in there. So, what's the answer? The answer, I don't know. The answer is, what's the answer to that?
Some of the answers are along the lines of what we're saying. If it's efshel v'ara, sometimes that's the answer.
Wait, it's not efshel v'ara. You guys gotta buy something. The company is no hefsher. It's the same fucking thing. It's not efshel v'ara. Right? You're not gonna have to know the flavors. What
I mean is, some of the things are exactly this, which is, if I could buy Pepsi that I know is kosher, or I could buy the other brand of cola that I don't know if that's kosher.
We don't tell either. We don't tell us, all right, you want to buy a soda without extra? Well, if you're a place you can't get anything else, then you can buy it. Nobody does that. It's not accepted.
Okay, but we'll think about that. Okay, so you're trying to say...
We have a job,
Yes, you're trying to understand. If we can talk about Safek Arlah, that's fine. I talk about our jobs, that's a different story.
I think the answer is minute. I think the answer is minute. What is minute? Accepted minute. So you don't buy food without extra.
That's it. What do you make of the minute? I'm saying, Shulchan has loads of cases that you can buy this, that have sure, this, even if you don't know if it's kosher, this is mutter.
Change.
You think that's what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm not sure how that plays into the
Safek. 40 years ago, people would buy without actually right and left. You know?
If you want to tell me,
so what you're saying now? What you're saying now is, I don't like your answer. That was not about the scriptures.
Okay.
But I think what you're saying now is that it actually changed. When it came to all these things now, it's not going to change. If somebody called us up, and when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, somebody says, I got Eretz Yisrael fruit without an extra. Can I eat it? Well, no, you can't take them to some rices. Right? We don't tell you, well, it's right. You don't use any of that. We just use extra.
So what you're saying is, when you say the words, it's a minute. Okay, I'm rephrasing that. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying is that even though the theoretically the din would be that it's mutter, being as there's a choice of buying foods only with the hechsher, we've gotten ourselves used to the fact that we can buy food with the hechsher. We don't buy things that without hechsher based on the all kinds of klol and that what might make it mutter. That's really saying what I'm saying, which is it's efshel v'ara. It's miut hamatzui says, go look for this thing that you could be sure is kosher rather than the one that's a Safek kosher. It's the same idea. Okay. Okay. Now wait a second. But not only is my answer being reconciling, being miyashiv, all these different shittas that I told you, but it has a huge enough meaning for us. Okay. As I told you, we don't live in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. We don't have fruit stores in America that have a hechsher on them that they don't have arlah. When I walk into Costco and I see the fruit that comes from Eretz Yisrael, I'm looking at this fruit, okay? And I don't know if this is fruit, yes, or it's not arlah, and it's a star fruit from Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, we know it's from Eretz Yisrael.
It says Israel on it. Yeah, I know it's from Eretz Yisrael. I walk into and I see in the store that the fruit there, the star fruit from Eretz Yisrael that I know according to my chart, according to this old chart, is 12% arlah. Okay, Am I allowed to buy it or am I not allowed to buy it? So it seems to me it depends as follows. If they're selling star fruit in the next fruit store that comes from Peru, okay, from Argentina, okay, you have star fruit from some other place that I know is from Chutz La'aretz, so then go buy that. Then I'm like an Eretz Yisrael. I have a choice of buying stuff buying the stuff that has no shiloh to it. But if this is the fruit that there is, they're only star fruit that comes from Eretz Yisrael. That's what's around, like the sweetie fruit. Okay, the sweetie fruit has very little oil, but let's say the sweetie fruit, it has less than 0.5%. Okay, but the sweetie fruit let's say the sweetie fruit would have 12%. Sweetie fruits only come from Eretz Yisrael. That's where they come from. I can't buy it anyplace else. So then, what do? I don't have a Chaim Kanievsky of miut hamatzui. I go back to the Ikar thing, what everybody else said, which is called the Parush. So I'm saying, so this question, this way to explain what they're saying is going to have a huge nafmid. Okay, if I'm right, that we only say miut hamatzui in cases when it's extra to get the food without a shiloh to it, then it depends. Do I have a choice to buy from another store that has fruits from a different country, from California? Or is my only choice to buy from Eretz Yisrael, in which case I'll say called the Parush. And assuming of course that it was Parush, that the Roiv is mutter, not going to be allowed to buy it. Okay, so for us, for Eretz Yisrael, Rav Chaim Kanievsky ends up being right. The truth is, in Eretz Yisrael, everybody says, now that we have stores that have the Hechsher on them, don't buy the stuff with the Safek Arlah. Go to the fruit store that has the Hechsher on it. So what I'm saying is, for them, it's not much of a shiloh altogether. They don't even think about, the people aren't thinking about the shiloh anymore because it's become not negay. It used to be very negay, now it became not negay. But for us, it's negay, and to us, the original psak, which is they call the Parush, l'chayra is very negay to us.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think you got to find out what it might be that I'm really used to not think this or something. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, fine.
If they didn't get Eretz Yisrael became, then nobody, of course you don't find
that maybe became because they have fruit stores that had no
whatever
armor.
it is, but whatever it is, the accepted meaning now is that you don't go buy our food without a hechsher. That's like anything else. Like soda. You don't buy it without a hechsher.
Do you buy food that you say is group 1, doesn't need a hechsher on it?
You never buy Coke?
That's actually.
It has a hechsher.
I understand.
No. He means if someone's overseeing the kashrus of the. Do you buy food that you say this food?
I buy group 2.
Do you buy things that don't need a hechsher on it? Do you buy things that say this food doesn't need a hechsher on it?
Yes.
Because you don't say everything needs a hechsher on it. You say is I know that it's the way these foods are made, and that gives me the comfort to say that I can assume this is kosher.
That's right.
That is to say called parush. That's you're making an assumption.
It's not called parush.
It's what I'm saying is you're using klolim to decide that the food is mutter. You're not saying that I'm only saying it if
That's
it's
still Levitic. That's still Levitic. That's okay. You want to have some foods that might be in the middle? I don't know. I have to leave it up to the Kashrus Commission to decide that. What according to our minhag is?
I still have more to say. Let me just finish up. We're going to wind down. Okay. Can't say I don't know. Okay. Now I told you that all of this is according to what most of the poskim say. I have to mention Rabbi Yashiv's shita, and then I have to mention what many of those poskim say something else, which I didn't tell you yet. Okay. Which is like this. Rabbi Yashiv says, I'm going to talk about it quickly. I'm just going to mention it in passing. Rabbi Yashiv's shita is that buying fruit in a fruit store is not an example of called the parush if more than 5% of that fruit is arla. It's something called Safek kavuah, okay, which we're not going to talk about. It's called Safek kavuah, and Safek kavuah, it's a machlokes nachronim whether Safek kavuah is considered kavuah or it's not considered kavuah, and he says you should be machmir on that Safek. That Safek you should be machmir. So here, what? It's, I don't know. It borders on those kind of questions. It's really nachronim who talk about it. It can't say in three shambles. I don't know. He says you should be machmir on that. Okay, so you should just know that just to put it into perspective, a number of the poskim who talk about the shiloh of Arlah specifically say, don't be choshesh about Safek kavuah. Okay, so you should know a number of people said that. Rabbi Yashiv himself only says that if it's more than 5%. He didn't say 5%. He said a certain thing, and then they translated that into 5%. But let's accept that as 5%. And many of the poskim that you should know, there seems to be a Beferish Ramah in Simon Kuf Yudalad who says that Safek kavuah is usher. Everybody asks on why the Ramah says that. The Ramah seems to say that. But most of that point assume that Safek kavuah is not usher. That's not considered a kavuah. So just for perspective, but you should just know there is such a shita who you don't say it's called the parush. Rather, it's considered kavuah if more than 5% is usher. Okay, you should just know most people don't accept that. I'm telling you that. But all the other people who talk about it called the parush, and some do or don't say straight out, either say it out or implicitly that it's not Safek kavuah. We should know there's another shita. Okay, but the last thing is that many of the people who I told you who are being makel, who say that it's called the parush, say similar ideas. Okay, not all exactly the same words, but similar ideas, which are like, for example, it's also to have hana from arla. And therefore, the store owner who sells you the fruit, if he sells fruit that's arla, he's having hana. So it's l'feiver to buy fruit from him because you're being machshel him in selling arla.
I mean, Safek
Safek with the Iver on a Safek, I guess. I don't know. Safek with the Iver. Others say a different thing. They say
he doesn't even know what's Arla. He has no idea either.
He may or may not. He may or may not know what's Arla. He may or may not. In Israel. Two men in Israel. They say Chazal tell us that you shouldn't be mefarsim kulas about things that people are makel about. Gemara. You shouldn't be mefarsim things like that. So Mamela, even though it's really mutter, people are makel about Arla, and therefore we shouldn't tell them that it's really called the Parash. Another variation of that is Chazal asked to buy food, Perish Shvias from a Choshen, and so too, we shouldn't buy Perish Arla, maybe we shouldn't buy Perish Safek Arlah from a Choshen either. Okay? I'm saying all different variations of Hagam that men hadin, the letter of the law would be that it would be mutter. In Ikar Adin we would say it's mutter because of called the Parash. Even so, there might be other reasons to not eat the food anyhow. Okay, maybe this is Yossi's minute. Not to eat the food anyhow. Okay? So, they all say this. Now, a whole bunch of people, a whole number of places can mention this thing. And Lamaisa is, in hindsight, we see the chachma of what they said. Because of what they said, because of these points, is, I'm guessing, is the inspiration for having stores that sell fruit that has no arla to it. And in the charts that mark how much arla there is, they point out that they notice over the years that there's less and less arla on the trees. Less and less arla. What does that mean, less and arla? It's not because people aren't planting trees, it's because the people who want to be able to sell to the people who care about it will spray their trees to make sure that they don't grow fruit for the first couple of years. Okay, they make efforts to make sure that those new trees don't have arla. They're planting trees, they're just making sure that they don't have fruit to them. So this idea, which is, let's be more careful so that we will avoid arla, is more careful than the din requires, has had an effect that over time there's less and less arla being sold in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so in hindsight we see the what'd you say? The benefits of why they said this. They're saying this, people are not being careful enough, we should be more careful than the din says, and Lamaisa, we're seeing the paris of that decision. Okay, we're seeing what's happened afterwards. That the amount. Now, there's plenty of fruits that have lots of arla with them. You look at the charts. There's lots and lots of fruits that have lots of arla, but the charts tell you that the people who write the charts say these have been going down over the years. This has overall been going down. Okay, now I have to just tell you we're not. Who are we to argue with that? But we have to wonder whether all those things apply to chutzarts. Okay, again, these people are talking for Eretz Yisrael. They're talking in Eretz Yisrael where if I don't buy this apple. If I don't know, maybe 30% of Eretz Yisrael who won't buy the apple, the guy won't have any place to sell his apple. It has an effect on his market. If I don't go to Costco and buy their fruits, they couldn't care less. Their fruit's going to be sold anyhow. Whether the Yidden in Chicago buy that fruit or don't buy the fruit, it's not what's making the difference between whether the store's staying open. Costco doesn't have a Isser Hana to sell Arla, so you have to wonder whether these kind of reasons, which are the din is it's mutter, but you shouldn't buy it to discourage people from selling Arla, whether those things apply to us in chutzarts. Yesh Lodin on that. Whether we have to think about those, does that apply to us? Or did they just mean that for the people here at Yisrael, what they do directly affects what farmers do? Do the farmers sell or do they not sell? So for them, we see that more clearly. It's not so clear whether that applies to us. You know, the orders, Costco's not ordering Jaffa oranges only if they know that it's not Arla because they know the guys in Chicago don't want to buy it. It's hard to hear it that way. You know what I mean? So it's not clear whether that shouldn't apply.